Hello everyone. Today we are going to have a new session with Charles Van Liam from Airserv East Glendale and Peoria. Today I'm very excited because Charles is a very unique guest for me. He started his own HVAC business as an AI native one. Let's just let Charles tell about himself and the business. Thanks Charles for joining me today, and can you tell about yourself and your business?
Sure, Mustafa. Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm glad it's an exciting topic. AI definitely is something that inspired me to decide to go towards HVAC, so I'm sure we'll get to that later. So I have my doctorate from the College of Health Solutions at Arizona State University. I work full-time as a professor where I teach statistics, research methods, and psychology. I decided with my father to open up an HVAC franchise. My dad had some background in HVAC previously and was coming towards a time in life where it made sense to maybe transition. He had been part of a family business in the past with his father, but he left that before I came into the work world. So I thought it would be an interesting way to intersect. And I chose to go this franchise route because I knew I was a systems guy and I liked the idea of having that structure, but still the freedom to implement some of my own models. So we started an Airserv franchise, which is part of the Neighborly Corporate, and we opened for business really just this year, really started generating revenue in March. So only 3.5 months or so that we've been at operational capacity.
Yeah, it's very interesting. You're a full-time psychology professor and owning an HVAC business. Why AI is just actually conquering everywhere? How do you end up
Yeah,
creating this HVAC business?
sure. Yeah, I went through a lot of selections. So it was over a year long of research, meeting with different opportunities. So I was looking for ways to invest that was still felt like it was creating opportunities and jobs and not just me throwing money in the market. But I really wanted to try to build something that felt like I could be proud of it, but that made a lot of sense with the current trajectory of what I feel like I see for global movement around economic forces, AI, technology revolutions, etc. So I had thought about doing everything. I researched some e-commerce options, I researched small business acquisition, and I researched franchising. And so I went through all of these different things and decided that e-commerce didn't feel like it was generating enough. It felt more like investment again. Like I'm throwing money at building an e-shop and just hoping people buy products, but I'm not really creating something that feels valuable or meaningful. So I decided that wasn't where I wanted to go right away. It didn't feel enough like that niche I was looking for. Small business acquisition felt like it required far too much upfront lift for me still planning to maintain my full-time professorship. And I felt like franchising provided kind of a structure where I said, I have a playbook to get started out of the gate. And if I know what I'm supposed to do, I'm sure I can execute. And so I really like the idea of franchising. Pros and cons. Franchising comes with royalties and all that stuff. But having that kind of systems guide out of the gate made a big difference to me when I was selecting how to start a business. And then I researched a variety of different types because, again, it wasn't like I had a vision for, I have this service, I want to start selling it to people. It was more like I want to build a company. And so I researched a variety of types of potential things and researched how much sense did they make in terms of, are they a relatively inelastic kind of supply-demand issue? Because I wanted things that are relatively resistant to economic downturns, recessions. I also wanted things that I felt could persist in the face of AI changing the workforce. We'll see how much it's job displacement versus redefinition, but that's what led me into some of the things that are like more manual or tactile tasks. So I researched things like everything from dog grooming trucks, like should I invest in a franchise for dog grooming, to things like there's a group where they do home maintenance and service, both business to business and business to customer, and it was more like general home maintenance and services. But HVAC made the most sense to me because my father had a little bit of background there, and I am convinced that the trades are going to be some of the most valuable kinds of skills that require this intersection of some cognitive ability and manual dexterity. That as opposed to really routine road tasks where we're already seeing robots starting to take some of those, whether it's folding laundry or running a restaurant in China or things like that. The things that require really tight spaces, awkward things, they're not as cookie cutter where you could just systematize it as quickly through a robotic process. And so that's why I think home services, plumbing, HVAC, things like that. So that's why I finally went that way. And then I live in Phoenix, where HVAC is a necessity, which makes it relatively inelastic.
Mm-hmm.
So it made sense to me for that to be something where I could feel good about it too, because people need that service as opposed to hoping that they'll buy something, but really feeling like you're providing a service that people need.
Yeah, very nice. So I don't know what happened to my video, but so actually you are using your existing skills. You studied neural networks, statistics, learned the machine learning models and everything, and it's wanted to just build something, a lean process.
Yeah.
So can you just tell about that philosophy as well?
Sure. Yeah. And that's one of the things where having the people in the field doing those jobs are things that I think will be more resistant to some of the initial AI shifts, at least. When I was at ASU in their neuroscience program, they had a guy who specializes there in developing prosthetic hands and things like that. And when you get into the complexity, the degrees of freedom that are required, and the fine tuning of talking about grabbing something with sufficient force that it doesn't fall, but you don't break it. Think about grabbing an egg. And we take for granted the cognitive complexity, the computing complexity involved in squeezing it hard enough, not too hard, and like all of the intersections of that. Our brain, the cerebellum, has 75% of our neurons, and it's primarily devoted to motor tasks, right? And motor learning. And those things take a lot. So thinking about that, I was like, the things that I can quickly automate are things that I can still do my full-time position and can use AI to help me with everything in the back office while I have techs in the field who are doing the thing that can't be automated yet. So my philosophy was very much so to be able to run the business lean on the back end, right? Thinking about how to integrate it with marketing, how to integrate it with consumer interaction, how to integrate it with price book modifications, updates, how to integrate it with things like accounting. So all these things that I've taken some classes and tried to train up myself enough in those to be useful, because you can't just rely on the AI. But like we learned back in the day when they first got scared about how smart computers and machine learning was getting, when the chess masters got beat by the first computers, but then a couple young guys who kind of know chess and a computer can beat that, right? That when you have that intersection of the human and machine. So that was the way I envisioned it, was thinking about how I could use and leverage AI and data understanding and my systems thinking to make a very lean HVAC business in the back office, instead of having to have a dispatcher, a CSR, having to have 4 or 5 working maybe full time, even though they might not always have that work to do, right? Because the phone might not be ringing when you're new, and so you're paying someone to sit. And so that was my vision, was how much I could use it to not replace the techs I need in the field, but to augment me so that I could be able to do it even with limited hours, but still with rapidity and quality.
So if it is not a sacrifice, with how many people are you operating your current business?
Yeah, so really we've got 2 technicians, a senior tech and a junior tech. My father and I are both involved in this. Obviously, I'm not doing just this. And we have a guy who's supposed to be part-time sales, but really hasn't fully hit the ground. So really, I would say we operate with kind of a 4-man team. And that's been enough for where we're at right now, but we're still working on growing. For me, I think that we could continue operating on a 4-man team, getting to a pretty good revenue mark where we could make a decision whether or not we wanted to grow. But I think we could actually be very profitable that lean.
Yeah, for sure. And so let's just switch to more practical parts of AI. So I think we can just start from marketing. How are you using AI tools in marketing, and how is the return? And also, can you tell us what are the failing parts? What are your learnings from that failures?
Sure. I use AI to triangulate, to brainstorm, to make decisions, and then also, as much as possible, to automate things. So AI often is, if nothing else, a sounding board for me through most decision-making processes. AI and I always joke that with my wife. AI and I did this today, right?
Yeah, she could be jealous sometimes.
So sometimes she's like, "Are you talking to me now? You want my advice?" No. Oh, yeah. But it's really good, because there's so many times, especially when you're trying to start something new, where you think you have a good idea and you just really want to bounce it off. And AI might not be perfect, but AI has access to so much training data and the breadth of humanity, and it has 80th percentile knowledge, I would argue, at least modern good models, right? And it has a minimum of 80th percentile knowledge in most domains. that means, are there humans who are better at some things than others? Maybe. So I'm a science geek, right? But Nature just published an article called Humanity's Last Exam, HLE, and it had hundreds of scientists, and they developed this huge exam to try to say, is AI expert at the doctoral plus level, like the ultimate level across all kinds of scientific disciplines, heavily weighted towards mathematics, understandably, but math and physics and all these things. And they intentionally made questions that had verifiable answers but couldn't just be Googled. And they made it so that old models all failed. And it was crazy. People talked about it as the limitations of AI, when some of the better models they tested when they first published it were like in the 40% or whatever. But I'm like, but there's no single human who's going to get better than 10% on that exam, right? So it's so funny to, because it's so funny because people talk about the Turing test, right? And so the Turing test was developed to differentiate, am I speaking to a human or a machine?
Yes.
And that if a human judge couldn't tell the difference, then it passes the test, is essentially how it goes, right?
Yes.
But nowadays we take for granted that we've gone so far past the Turing test, because nowadays if you know you're talking to an AI, it's because it's way better than any human could possibly contrive in that amount of time, right? Like when I get a response back from an AI and it's 3 pages of really solid, well thought out information, no human could have produced that in 3 seconds, right? But we take for granted that we blow so far past that, we keep trying to make these new tests. So anyway, but like, when you look at that, so I'm using AI. I know it's not perfect, but I always remind people, you can't compare it to a calculator. You have to compare it to another human. Humans are fallible too. I'm going to say a bunch of stuff on this podcast that's incorrect, right? I'll do my best to be accurate, but I'll make errors, right?
Yeah.
And people think it should be like a calculator. If I type in 2 plus 2, it should give me 4 every time. But I'm like, no, it's actually doing its own form of reasoning, right? Using neural net and triangulation. And some people call it computation. I think it's reasoning. If what we do is reasoning, I think it's reasoning. It's just pure electric instead of biochemical and electric. I brainstorm with it all the time. Now, of course, it can make mistakes, but I've used it for everything like trying to set up marketing plans. Think about, where should I allocate funds? What things should I try? What opportunities are out there? So in building up marketing, everything from it trying to help me run and target what kind of Google campaigns. I never ran Google PPC or LSA or any of that in the past, so I had to do a bunch of research on understanding what kind of campaigns are out there. But then everything you have to do nowadays requires you to do a bunch of computer forms to get anything active, right? And it's got to be filled out just so, and blah, blah, blah. So I've used AI to help me do everything from ensure that I can set up like A to P to be able to use text channels with things like Twilio, to trying to make sure that I'm building sufficient ad campaigns on trying to run Google PPC, and do I want to only spend PPC for the call only campaign, even if it gets rated as less effective. So everything from brainstorming to actually getting those live, I use AI to help me with, because I wasn't who was doing that all in the background. So it's me learning it alongside AI and implement it. So I've used it for that. I've used it also for a lot of social media stuff, and I've built out some agents that actually help with that quite a bit, using combinations of things like Replit, Claude, and Make, where what I can do is actually pull from my CRM, which I use ServiceTitan. I can pull real-time jobs data of like, what kinds of work are we doing, and who completed the work, and did we get a good review? And I can have AI pull all this, write a really solid response. And so I built in like, it pulls local weather data. It pulls local news that might be related to HVAC, because there are APIs that are open for a lot of this stuff nowadays. So it pulls all this context. It's been trained on who I am, who our business is, what kinds of things, like what tone should I use. I've trained it on all of that, given it its kind of guidelines. And then it pulls all this data in together, and it crafts posts that are built specifically to meet the requirements of all the different social media platforms. Because the characters you're allowed, whether a picture is required, all those things differ from one social media channel to another. But of course, trying to build up until you're big enough with SEO for people to call you, which 3 months in or whatever, we're not, you're to drive that awareness. So I built this agent that can pull all this real stuff and make what look like real solid human posts written in my voice, using photos from our jobs. And I've also trained it like no PIIs allowed, and I always have human oversight. So it creates everything, but I go through an approval process. But then all I have to do is click a button that I approve it. AI's created it all, and it automatically gets through all the pipelines to the appropriate channels, whether that's LinkedIn, Facebook, my Google business page. and all those things. Like that's been a really useful tool. But yeah, so there's lots of different ways, from social media marketing to marketing campaigns on things like Yelp and Google, to customer replies, where when trying to set up A2P, where we can do quick responses. I have AI where when leads come in, it crafts a message that is targeted to the type of lead, and it automatically generates that so it's ready to just hit send. So a human's in the loop still to review it, but I don't have to type out a message. The AI, as soon as the lead has come in, has already written an appropriate response to send them so that I can be speed to lead, right? I can respond more rapidly because the draft's already there. So those are some of the things. I'm sure there's more if you keep, but as a professor, I can talk forever. Those are some of the things I think I've used AI strategically at every level, from planning to execution, in a variety of areas for marketing.
Yeah, and also you told me that it's a new business. Established home service business, they usually make most of their money from repeating customers, referrals, and also membership programs, which actually doesn't count for you. So you have a very brand new business. So I think you're just mostly outbounding those customers and just creating your own demand. And so I think you also have some lead generation stuff with the AI, as far as I remember. Maybe you can also tell a little bit about that one too.
In terms of lead gen, we've got a couple different platforms, and we've used AI to kind of select some of our lead gen opportunities. I guess I'm trying to call to mind which specific instance for lead generation we might be trying to think of. Let's see. We just recently decided to bring on a group that actually focuses on using AI to help build out SEO and lead gen using AI-driven meta ads and things like that. And then I use in my funnel for lead gens, when leads come in through lead aggregators, like I'm talking about, what I've done is build out systems where I use a combination of AI responses and make scenarios that allow all that information to come in. The AI crafts and can respond in terms of responding quickly to leads. I do have some outbound outreach stuff that I use AI for. So one of them is I actually subscribe to a platform that gives you customer data. It's called Crexy. And what I've done is I use AI. You have to go through all the DNC stuff. It's a company with all the do not call lists for telemarketing, both in the state and federally. Make sure I'm following all the rules. So you got to research like the difference between CAN, Spam Act, and the DNC. I use AI to go through these leads that I have of people who live in my area, where I can select based on like age of homes and things like that, people who might need HVAC services, to just do outreach. And I'm very much like soft sales, if you will. So I just want to introduce myself. Hey, here's who I am. I'm a community college professor here, and I'm a veteran, and we're trying to do this thing that just take care of people in our community. And one of the things about running lean is I can also make sure customers are taken care of, because I don't have to upcharge them. The big behemoth companies have to charge so much because they have so much overhead. So if I can run lean, I can pay my employees well, I can give customers great pricing, right? And everyone wins. So I use the AI to help me. Me plus Claude, we always go through the DNCs. It's huge lists, right? But we do all the scrubbing to make sure that we're compliant with DNC. We keep that up to date on the required 90-day cycle. And I use Claude to do outbound messaging, like A2P type stuff. Email is really easy because email doesn't require the same registration ahead of time, right? And as long as you keep human in the loop, the A2P stuff, the rules are a little bit different from what I've been able to learn. So as long as I'm still the one hitting send, I can have AI draft my messages as long as I do final approval, right? If you want no human in the loop, then you've got to deal with making sure you have fully registered campaigns for the intended purposes. But every day I run outbound with these lists I've curated for local homeowners who might benefit from the services. We've drafted materials, and I can now go in and click just 2 buttons in the morning, and I can send 60 outbound messages introducing my company in my voice, customized emails, using Claude to do all this for me. So I use it for that kind of outreach, for early introduction, and all of these things are great when you build these systems, and then you come back the next day. You can either set them to run on schedule. So I've built one where, for example, every morning it goes through all of my different lead ad channels, all of my different possible leads, and it creates a list. Here are the top people you should try to reach back out today. Here are their issues. Here was the last thing we talked to them about. And so then you've got a quick hit list of who do we need to reach out to in terms of phone calls, because we still do phone calls human, right? I don't use a voice agent. My dad or I get on the phone and talk to people. That's a great place for it. And I feel like people still appreciate the human on the line a lot of times. But in terms of writing an email, you're not dealing with a human, you're just reading text. So for me, I feel like letting AI handle that one, but having it write in my voice, that makes plenty of sense, right? So it will draft the messages for who we need to reach out to for texts or for emails, and it'll give us the call list so that I can just go in and click the buttons to approve the messages, to do outreach again via text, and then we can say, hey, who should we call this morning? It's already there waiting for us in our inbox before the day starts. So these are some of the different things that I've done, like building out those automated systems that allow us to minimize the amount of time. Instead of us having to go through 8 different tabs of lead generation,
Yes.
we've got it waiting in our box for us, already curated.
Yeah, then it's just a single button click after that. So on the marketing side, I see that you just built so many things, but I also know that you don't have any people on your back office. Like you don't have any bookkeeper, any HR,
No.
accounting.
No.
So AI is your best friend over there too. And can you also tell about how you are using in the back office with the AI?
Totally. And again, I spend a lot of time, my background is doing research, so I try to train myself up on as much as I can. So for example, before starting all this, I took accounting classes on purpose.
Oh.
So I did take accounting classes to learn enough of that to feel good about it. Then I also have AI that I've trained on accounting materials, right? So that I know that it's been trained. Now, nowadays it does a great job if it can go out and do research online, but if you want to know what data it's trained on, you can also do that when you build local projects and store that knowledge base. So I use AI to help with a variety of those types of tasks, and it definitely streamlines it for me. So I use QuickBooks Online. I do all my own bookkeeping, but that's another one of those AI and I. Because again, it's like knowing enough, but having verification is so valuable. And I feel like that intersection of like, I'm not trusting AI to do everything where there's no intersection of human responsibility, but I know that adding AI to me will make me better, right? If I try to do it alone, the amount of time or the potential for error is much greater. But when I say, okay, I put together all my stuff, Claude, verify that this is all good, right? Or vice versa. I say, hey, Claude, put this together, and then I double check it and have that back and forth to make sure it's pristine. So I do use AI to help me with bookkeeping. Nowadays, most of them have integrations where you can integrate apps like QuickBooks and things like that. And so that's great if you need to like quickly say, I keep up what's my marketing spend every month, and I have AI pull my reports. So I'll give it, hey, here's all of our general ledger stuff, go through, find all these things. We made sure they're coded correctly beforehand. It can quickly give me where's my marketing spend across everything. And it's much more rapid than I could possibly do alone.
Also, I remember you did something on the price book, so which is also one of the
price
most
book.
painful part of ServiceTitan.
And I think that the franchising group was kind of shocked because they build out a kind of a skeleton-like base level price book for you of the one line that you might choose to carry. But it's a lot of work to build a price book, and it's constant work because you have to update things. And if you really want it to be a good price book, you need lots of details, because things like making sure you have unit dimensions, not just unit pricing, so that if you have a small scuttle hole, you know you can get that air handler into the attic without ripping their ceiling apart. So having all of the right details, I definitely took huge advantage of Claude Cowork building projects for my price book, which helps in multiple ways. So in price books in ServiceTitan, you can import and export Excel files, and every tab tells you different kinds of information. You'll have equipment that's linked to certain materials, and you'll have a tab that's the equipment material link. Having data understanding myself already, the price book I think made sense to me in ways that other people it might not always make sense, because it's just understanding the data architecture. But having that and then being able to train Claude on what I knew, have it learn more, and then I use Claude and Cowork now to maintain a constant price book project, which allows me to really quickly update pricing. I've trained it on all of the information that I can get from all of my different distributors, so that it has, it's like, here's all of the equipment we carry, here's their pricing, here's their dimensions, and we'll go through, and again, it's multiple laps. So you have Claude check itself, you check Claude, because if you want it to be good, there's, just like with humans, there's going to be a data entry error somewhere, right? Back when I used to work in research labs, you'd have back when you still had paper and you had to type in data off of the sheets you got from participants, but you'd have 3 humans who verified the data before you use it for science.
Mm-hmm.
So I still use that kind of approach, but I use it with me and 2 AIs, right?
Yeah.
So that I have 3 verifiers. But Claude Projects helps immensely to keep my price book. One, to help build it out at the outset, so I was able to have a really good functional price book very rapidly relative to what it would take most people. I would say I probably had a really solid working price book in the amount of time it would have taken most people to even just start to understand what's in their price book. So
definitely.
yeah, so Claude was immensely helpful for that. And again, I use a lot of Claude co-work projects. It's great because you can share the folders. It maintains the record of the history so that it knows what's going on. It's not a new session every time. If you use AI just chatting on ChatGPT on a web browser, it's like next time you're in, you do a new session, it doesn't have any memory of those things. So making sure that it's got a way to store memory. Projects are great for that, and it can also access local files that you give it permission to. And of course, Claude can even update files directly, which I take advantage of with the price book.
Yes.
And I'll have it, so I'll train it on, here's all my distributor data for this, right? Or hey, we just had a 3% increase, just apply it globally. But so going through, what are my local pricing for materials, for equipment, for all that? So I got all the materials I could get, and I trained Claude on all of that. And then I trained Claude on, okay, what is the structure? What's the data architecture of our price book? And I said, okay, here are, for example, some pieces of equipment that are fully built out. This is exactly how they should work. Look at how it exists on the equipment page. Look at how it exists on the material page. And look at how it exists as an equipment material link. Notice that's how all of my equipment should look, because this one is correct. And so once I build out a correct one and I train it on what's correct, it can mimic that immensely well and super quickly. And so doing this kind of back and forth allowed me to have a price book that's really functional. And then the other thing that makes that so useful, especially having migrated into HVAC where I learned so much about that in a small amount of time, when I need to build out some estimates, I can pull Claude on my price book and I can say, hey, I need to build out this. This is what I think I need. Can you verify what are the best options I have for this kind of build out for a client job? And it can give them to me, and then I can verify them. And that it's a way to feel more confident in every decision that's being made, and a way to do it quickly while still doing it well.
Yeah, guys, so you have a full end-to-end AI jobs and workflows, and just heavily using Claude Cowork. So I also like Claude Cowork very much. So it's actually just something on top of Claude Code as well, but it's actually more easy to use. So as a professor, you know how AI works, but I also know that you encourage your students to use the AI. How do you just make them differentiate, okay, depending on it, or just using as a tool, like competitive advantage for their staff? And how you then adjust those things, or just give some advice to the contractors to leverage the AI?
Yeah, well, and so I do use AI also, like you mentioned, contractors. So I think there were 2 parts there, and students. We have what's called Bluon, which is a really interesting AI tool that they built. It's one of, there's a variety of small spin-offs now, but it's one of the bigger ones that actually is trained on the data for all kinds of different equipment in HVAC. And so it's an in-the-field AI tool that can help technicians do their job to troubleshoot problems, and it can pull up real quickly specific pages in a manual that you might need to get to, right? And so it has access and been trained on all of that. So we do use it for some of that stuff in the field as well. And I've trained models as well on things like NEC, which is like electrical code and all that, so that I can, again, verify my understanding of things when I'm building out different things for permitting or whatnot. And so doing this back and forth. So at the end of the day, just like in those contexts, at the end of the day, I and my company are the ones who are liable and responsible for whatever is done, right? So we still have to do it well. Claude can help us do it well and can help us do it faster, or whatever. I use Gemini. I have a bunch, right? So I have stuff that's vibe coding. Nowadays, things like Make, and that kind of goes to the next point, talking about students. When you create a way for us to do things more simply, we will, right? I guess I would use the word lazy, but I don't know if lazy is right. But from an evolutionary standpoint, being efficient makes sense. That is, don't waste energy on things that don't require them, right?
Yes.
And why would I take time writing HTML even if I can, right? Like I can write my own HTML. I've done it for my course in the back. But why would I do it now when Claude does it better and faster? Like, why would I write it? Like,
Yes,
I have to
definitely.
I have to verify that it's correct. But Claude is a better coder than I am, right? I'm not a 98th percentile coder. I'm a 20th percentile coder, right? So it's like I know some, but I don't know enough to be better than Claude. And so I kind of use that philosophy with my students as I remind them that you can outsource your labor, but you can't outsource your responsibility. Although that's an interesting one that gets into like psychology and legal issues. I could see, for example, talk about Citizens United, how like we made corporates persons so they could donate to people. So a corporation is now a person? That seems weird. How does it have rights like a person? But it does, even though it's a made-up entity. I'll be curious if in the next 10 or 15 years we see legal cases about whether or not AI has personhood rights.
That's very interesting philosophical debate.
But at least until we're in that space, a human at the end of the day is the one who's responsible for these things, right? You can use that tool, but you are responsible for it. So the same way with my students, I encourage them to use AI, to lean into it, and I encourage them to try to use it more like a tutor and a collaborator, right? Which is how I try to use it. I find that when you use it best, that's how you use it, especially for things that are important. Now, I know that a bunch of students are probably not going to use it that way. But inside of academia right now, there's a lot of debate about how much
Yes.
do we ban it, how much do we use it.
Yeah.
I think that it's an arms race we can't win if we try to tell students not to use AI, right? It's just an arms
Yes.
race you cannot win. And there's something called the toupee effect, which is where people think they can detect AI, but all you really can detect are the bad use cases for AI. You can't detect all of them. So you get yourself into thinking you can tell when someone used it or not, but you really can't most of the time.
Yeah. So it just looks at the patterns, some patterns, and if you, other than those detections actually don't work very well.
And I always laugh when I'm like, how are you detecting AI? And they're using a tool that is AI to detect AI. I'm like, so you're policing AI with AI, right? So like, again, because we're at a place now where even though a lot of people don't want to admit it, we almost trust AI more than we trust humans for a lot of that, right? Because
Yeah,
imagine this. A professor gets something submitted and says, I think this is AI. They're going to ask for some kind of evidence. What kind of evidence? They're going to run it through a tool that uses AI to give a probability ranking to whether or not it was AI generated. And they're going to use that, not just the professor's word, to make a determination, right? And that's just one instance. It's also true in the business world. All
Yes.
kinds of things. How someone's using an AI to monitor if someone else is using an AI and all this stuff. But
Yeah, especially in the legal, I think it's more efficient than lawyers. But
So-
yeah, at the end, someone needs to just look at it and just be responsible for that.
yeah, so I tell my students that I think I'd be doing them a disservice to pretend this tool isn't there, and that spending time to learn how to use it well is worthwhile. And I don't have time to get into all the other domains related to socioeconomic status and environmentalism. And more books have been written about AI in a small time than I think ever anything else in history, right?
I think so.
But just thinking about it from the standpoint of I'm trying to teach you to think and learn, and this is going to be something that's in that space. I think that we're deluding ourselves to think that we're not on some kind of precipice of the obsolescence of human intelligence as we've known it in the past. That like thinking that we stand alone with this ability to reason, I think that's clearly past, right? And I think it's worth being something we talk about because one of the three godfathers of AI, Jeff Hinton, was a cognitive psychologist and data scientist who built the foundational neural net models like K-nearest neighbor, like triangulating how much to weight things to make predictions based on how close in space it was. It's very interesting, but I think that we need to teach them that it's there and we need to encourage them to use it to do better work because why wouldn't we want to do better work? But we need to understand that there is still, as I mentioned, at every one of these intersections where I take time to say, I spend time trying to research and understand this myself, right? I don't just expect the AI to have the answers, but if I have something I don't know, AI can help me know what I need to go research too sometimes, right? So I think that we have this ability now with things like AI, I mean, built on top of the internet, which is the foundation of all of this, to anything we want to know, we can probably go learn. And so seeing it as that kind of opportunity instead of as some kind of black box that you're not allowed to touch. And I think that what we have to do then, at least in my role with talking about how I do it with students, I think we have a responsibility to try to make them interested. Because here's the thing, like I said, we will take the easy way out whenever possible, unless we have some kind of intrinsic motivation that makes us want to spend the time because we're interested. Humans have natural desire, curiosity, play, right? We find value in doing things and developing things. We don't want to sit around and do nothing, right? But the thing is, we only invest that additional effort above and beyond when we have good reason to. And so I think a lot of people are having to grapple with, when you ask students to write 5-page papers about a topic, like, there's value to that and whatnot, don't get me wrong, but I think we're finding that the way we used to do this, we relied on things like simply having people write to demonstrate knowledge. That verbal communication, whether written or oral, was the way to demonstrate knowledge and mastery. Because we never had anything else that could mimic that the way that we now do with AI, where it's a linguistic champ, right? LLMs, right? And so now what I try to do is let students choose the way they want to show what they've learned. So I use autonomous type assignments, which is based on some psychology, Deci and Ryan, like what's called self-determination theory. We tend to find ourselves motivated to do things when there's a degree of autonomy, a desire for competence or mastery, and a degree of relatedness. That's when we tend to feel motivated. When I feel like I'm choosing to do this, I want to do this, I like doing this, autonomy. Competence or mastery, when I feel like I'm getting better at something, or look how good I did, a sense of progress. And relatedness, when we feel connected to people. So what that means for me as a professor is I have to figure out how to make them feel connected enough to me in their learning journey. I have to make them feel like they're getting something useful out of all of this stuff. And I have to make them feel like they have some say in the process instead of just write another paper. So I give students a variety of different options about how they want to demonstrate what they learned, so that they can choose from those options, and then I encourage them to use AI to help develop one. But then they have to submit evidence of their conversation, have to have a minimum number of interactions with the AI, so it can't just be like, do this assignment for me, right?
Oh, yeah.
Now, maybe they might do that on the side and not submit that chat, right? I'm not an idiot. Maybe.
No, we are just aware of those things.
Yeah, but so they have to show me some back and forth. And they also have to think about things where the AI demonstrated uncertainty, or where the AI might have gotten something incorrect, to show that they're still thinking critically. So I really try to encourage them to think about it like, you chose this type of product and assignment, so now you're using this tool to make it the best possible. So this is what I'm trying. I have no idea if it's the right tack to take or not, but in the modern era, I think that those are some of the things that we're going to have to try to wrestle with in education. And again, just me doing this on the side, outside of my professor job in an HVAC world, realizing how much AI allows me to do things I couldn't otherwise do. It doesn't mean I don't have to use my own ability to think, but if my job is to prepare students for a role in the economy, in the work world, right? Yeah, I want to teach them to think. I want to make them have a sense of inquiry. I want them to develop critical thinking skills. But we also, let's not delude ourselves, in terms of our socioeconomic structures, we're preparing them to be a contributing member to society and the world, right? And I think most jobs are going to see AI touching them. And so if my role is to help them be prepared, I think including AI training directly, right, and just leaning into it instead of trying to shy away from it or police it or ignore it, helps me maybe do that job better for them.
Got it. So yeah, we almost came to the end of our session. You told about how you started, why you choose this business, and how you are using AI in the marketing back office, and also about its philosophical perspective and how to use it. So I don't know if you just want to add anything about it, and also do you want to add how people can find you, your business?
So I'll just do the same thing you get at the bottom of any conversation, where Charles may make mistakes, right? Just so Claude, Gemini, Charles. So I'm sure there are things in this, and I think that's, hopefully people find that making mistakes is opportunities to learn.
Yeah, definitely.
Hopefully I didn't botch anything or get it too incorrect, anything I said today on the call. And whether or not any of the ways I'm going about things are the right way or the best way, I have no idea. All I know is they're a way. And so we're finding a way and making a way. And AI has made that possible in an industry that I think will be of a lot of value. And I think some of that will be increasing value because of the way AI is reshaping our landscape to make things like manual dexterity more valuable in some ways, especially when they intersect, again, like I said, with some kind of cognitive ability, intelligence, or expertise, right? Not just simple rote tasks like I have a robot vacuum, right? That's pretty rote. But the trades that require expertise and ability. Yeah, hopefully I didn't say anything too misleading or incorrect. I try to be accurate and thorough, and I apologize for temporarily waxing.
No, actually it was very nice. I think it was very interesting for all of the listeners. You have a very different perspective, I think, so everybody will find it very useful. Yeah, we shouldn't hesitate to make mistakes. That's actually how we learn. And also, if you don't take any actions, you don't have opportunity to do stuff. And yeah, thanks, Charles. So it was a very interesting and insightful session for me and also for our listeners.
Well, thank you, Mustafa. I appreciate it. And again, we are AirServe of East Glendale, Peoria. So you can find us. Our website is airserve.com/East-Glendale-Peoria. You can find us there. You can find us on Facebook, on all the different social media platforms. So yeah, and if you're in the West Valley, if you just type in airserve.com in our area, you'll automatically come to us. But I appreciate the conversation. These are things I enjoy, hence professorship works well for me because...
Yeah, so actually it was a very easy session for me. You took my stuff to make it easy for me. Yeah, thank you, Charles, and yeah, have a good rest of your day.
You too. Thank you.